8 unexpected immigration havens for Black people that are booming with opportunity. You won't believe which countries Black people are starting to call home, not because they're famous, but because they're quietly opening doors that most people haven't noticed yet. Welcome to BLK Lens, where we unpack the world of migration through the lens of Black experience. In today's video, we're diving into a topic that doesn't get enough attention, but is becoming increasingly relevant. 8 unexpected countries that are becoming new havens for Black immigrants. From Portugal's rising tech hubs to Suriname's forest-framed villages, from the gleaming lights of Dubai to the laid-back rhythm of Costa Rica, each destination on this list holds a set of contradictions, welcoming but cautious, full of opportunity, yet laced with challenge. Some places will offer community, some will offer freedom, and some will make you ask, is this really where I can belong? This video isn't just a list of facts. It's a real conversation about choice, identity, and what it means to live somewhere where you can simply be yourself. If you're considering a new path, if you're tired of being watched, judged, or boxed in, or if you're just curious where Black folks are quietly thriving around the world, you're in the right place. So sit back, turn on the subtitles if you need them, and let BLK Lens show you the paths you might not have considered before. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. What you're about to hear might just change how you see your future. 1. Portugal. There's something strange that happens the first time you set foot in Lisbon. The light feels softer here. The pastel yellow walls, the soft clanging of old trams through cobbled streets, the faces of the Portuguese always carrying a polite smile, as if used to strangers coming and going. But that very gentleness has made many Black immigrants pause. Because it's not the cold stare or furrowed brows found at Nordic borders. It's courtesy. And courtesy sometimes is how people keep their distance with elegance. They say Portugal is rising. Tourism has exploded post-pandemic, money rushing into ancient cities like a new tide. Beachside cafes, tech startups, digital hubs opportunities sprouting everywhere. And with them, chances arise not by asking where you're from, but what you can do. Many Black immigrants have chosen Lisbon or Porto not because they're perfect, but because they don't demand perfection. Compared to the endless paperwork of France or Germany, Portugal's visa pathways feel lighter, an affordable investment, a stable remote job, and the door cracks open. They call it the soft entry into Europe. And its true life here, if you're not chasing grandeur, is livable. The cost of living is modest, especially outside the cities. A small family can get by on just a few €1,000s a month in seaside towns where the salt wind blows and neighbors still greet each other by name. It sounds peaceful, and many Black immigrants say it's the first time they didn't feel under the microscope. Not everyone stares like you're a variable in a social equation. But that peace also wears a mask. Because behind the warm Lusophone culture with Angolan and Mozambican communities thriving, there are cracks you don't always see. A Black couple searching for an apartment in Lisbon might get politely turned away not for lack of money, but because the landlord didn't feel it was a good fit. A child of African descent might be judged more harshly in school not because of grades, but because behavior needs improving. These things don't appear in rental contracts or immigration forms, but they lurk, quietly, in tone and glance. And Portugal, for all its charm, is still a small country. There are opportunities, but salaries are modest. Those arriving with dreams of fast transformation may find those dreams unraveling. Housing in big cities is tightening, rent prices soaring. Even young locals are being squeezed, let alone newcomers. So the question isn't, is Portugal good for Black immigrants? The real question is, are you ready to live in a place that's both welcoming and distant, both affordable and costly, both safe and elusive? And can you find your footing in those gray spaces where warmth and wariness coexist, quietly, like those stone-paved streets lying still beneath your daily steps? 2. Costa Rica. People often speak of Costa Rica as if time slows down there, not in a stagnant way, but with intentional stillness. Like an old man pouring tea at dawn, or the sun filtering endlessly through dense rainforest canopies. But beneath that easygoing surface lies a certain quiet that feels suspicious, like a country that has chosen to smile instead of speaking too loudly about things that are hard to say. Pura Vida, Pure Life is more than a slogan. It's a way of moving through the world. A nation with no military, no aggression, no loud claims of dominance. For many Black people who have grown used to being scrutinized, questioned, and challenged elsewhere, that matters. In Costa Rica, they don't have to brace themselves to explain why their passport is real or why they don't look like tourists. Here, you can arrive and simply be a newcomer, not a suspect. But that sense of calm isn't born out of thin air. It's built on a democratic system, upheld like a quiet discipline, on policies committed to clean energy, sustainable cities, and rainforest preservation. As if the country is whispering to immigrants, "We've made space for you." And many Black newcomers have shared that, for the first time, they're not living in a state of resistance but coexistence. Still, coexistence doesn't always mean ease. The bureaucratic rhythm here flows like tropical wind, gentle at times, frustratingly slow at others. A business permit might take months. A residency application might be returned for a missing stamp that was never clearly required. And it's not uncommon for Black applicants to be asked a few extra questions, just to be sure. Even so, Costa Rica remains open in its own way, a place where a steady pension or an idea for ecotourism can carve out space. Beach towns with small guest houses, jungle tours run by immigrants, English lessons for local kids opportunities bloom not in grand gestures, but in quiet cracks. Not too big, but enough to build a life with dignity. The Afro-Costa Rican community in Limon helps make the unfamiliar feel less lonely. It's not a presence you'll feel everywhere, but the beat of a drum during festivals, the scent of Caribbean cooking, the nod of recognition from someone who sees you, those moments stitch together a soft sense of belonging. And still, the question remains, is Costa Rica a paradise? Probably not. But it is a pause, a place where someone exhausted by constant scrutiny can catch their breath. A place where life doesn't have to be fought for in every moment. As long as you understand that even paradise has limits, and maybe it's those very limits that show how far one has traveled just to feel normal again. 3. Panama. There's a paradox in Panama. The more it grows, the harder it is to define. How do you describe a place that's both a financial hub and a transcontinental trade artery, yet pulses with the heartbeat of calypso from Colon and the smoky scent of Caribbean street food drifting by the docks? Many Black immigrants arrive here as outsiders, only to realize they don't feel entirely out of place. Not because everything is easy, but because in Panama, the unspoken seems to be part of everyday life. The economy moves like the ships through the canal, steady, deliberate, not flashy, but heavy with consequence. It's not the kind of boom that makes headlines, but a quiet, resilient growth built on a dollarized economy, a decentralized financial system, and a location that the entire world has to pass through. It doesn't just attract investors, it gives Black migrants, many worn down by the financial constraints of their home countries, a tangible exit route that feels real. The Friendly Nations visa catches people off guard. A modest real estate investment, proof of economic ties, and the door to residency swings open, not out of kindness, but policy. Yet in a pragmatic world, policy is sometimes more trustworthy than promises. Then there's something else that sets Panama apart from the rest of Central America. The Afro-Caribbean community isn't a hidden minority. In Colon, in Bocas del Toro, they're stitched into the national fabric, not just in festivals or cuisine or music, but in the way people look at one another in the street. Many newly arrived Black migrants have said they feel less pressured to explain who they are. It's not the absence of racism, but the absence of being pre-labeled. Still, Panama is no utopia. Income inequality runs deep, and anyone mesmerized by the glass towers of Panama City might miss the rows of precarious housing on the outskirts. Colón, the very heart of Afro-Caribbean cultural brilliance, is also among the country's most crime-affected areas. And in corporate boardrooms, newcomers soon learn that here, social connections often carry more weight than business plans. Yet through all those contradictions, Panama still demands attention. A small nation with a loud voice in global logistics, a place that, despite its divides, leaves just enough room for someone to step in if they know how. For many Black people searching for a place to begin again, not too far from home, not buried in bureaucracy, Panama becomes an eerie convergence of momentum and survival. A country where the real question isn't how safe is it, but rather, can you carve out your own rhythm in a system that never stops moving? 4. Colombia. Some cities, when viewed from above, don't just shine with electricity, they breathe. Medellin is one of them. Once a symbol of violence seared into the memories of generations, it is transformed into a tech-forward hub where young people launch startups in sunlit cafes, and billboards no longer advertise weapons but Python boot camps. But for Black immigrants, the first impression isn't just about opportunity, it's a sense of suspension. Like being welcomed by someone who's not entirely sure they can keep the invitation open. Colombia is growing, truly not just through economic data, but through the way its creative economy is now seen as a national strategy. From film and street art to software development, this country is sketching a new identity with the hands of those long kept at the margins. That's why many Black newcomers feel they can shoulder their way in without apologizing too much. Still, many have shared that they're asked, "Where are you from?" in a tone less curious, more cautious. The digital nomad visa opens up a different kind of pathway. No need to plug into the local job market, just enough income and a good internet connection, and you can work from a Bogota apartment for a firm based in Atlanta. But even in that freedom, there are invisible snags. Paperwork stalled indefinitely because of a system glitch, a business license delayed by a public servant on indefinite leave. And the truth is, many Black immigrants have learned to wait not because they've mastered patience, but because they haven't been given many alternatives. Still, Afro-Colombian culture here isn't a decorative layer meant to soften the national image. It's vibrant, rooted, and holds its own voice. In regions like Choco, music, cuisine, and festivals aren't just cultural identity, they're declarations. We are still here. Many Black immigrants say it wasn't until they joined an impromptu drum circle in a neighborhood plaza that they felt less alone. But that light also casts shadow. Rural areas still bear scars of past conflict, and instability can erupt without warning. And while city centers gleam brighter each day, not everyone shares in that shine. Income inequality, informal labor, and class divides aren't just statistics, they're the alleyways newcomers must learn to navigate. And that's when the old question returns, with a lower pitch. Can a country trying to remake itself become a beginning for someone also seeking rebirth? Colombia doesn't promise safety wrapped in certainty, nor does it roll out the red carpet. But in that very imperfection, many Black immigrants have found something else, a chance to test their strength without having to beg for recognition. 5. Mexico. People often think of Mexico as a temporary stop, a buffer between the American dream and Latin reality. But for many Black immigrants, Mexico is where they finally stop running. Not because it's perfect, but because it doesn't trap them in stares. From the chaos of Mexico City to the quiet corners of Merida, there's something hard to name, the feeling of being able to exist without asking permission. Mexico doesn't need to try to be welcoming, it already is, by nature. A massive mosaic of migration, where indigenous roots, European remnants, and northern influences all overlap. Black newcomers arrive as another wave not yet familiar, but not pushed aside either. Many share that they find their people in Facebook groups, in casual meetups at cafes, at expat-organized hip-hop nights. Not huge, but real. The residency process isn't overly complicated, at least on paper. A stable income, valid documents, and the temporary visa door opens. Plenty have arrived on tourist permits, and later transitioned to long-term stays, not by skirting rules, but by moving within the gaps of a system that isn't too rigid. It creates a sort of unofficial flexibility, where opportunity and risk always walk together. Big cities, especially Mexico City and Guadalajara, offer space for Black folks to start businesses without being squeezed by unspoken white standards. Soul food joints, African hair salons, cultural identity workshops, these aren't just services. They're statements. We're here, and we've made space. Some Black entrepreneurs say that because no one forced them to blend in, they were finally able to truly belong. Still, Mexico doesn't hide its darker edges. Violence is part of the reality, especially in outer states. There are areas where one wrong turn can bring unforeseen danger. And even in expat-friendly zones, there are moments like that sideways glance at immigration, or the repeated questions about where you're really from that remind Black immigrants they were never assumed to belong. Amid it all, Mexico remains a real choice. Not because it's entirely safe, but because it doesn't suffocate. A place where a Black presence doesn't need permission to have value, but also a place that demands sharp awareness to read the air, to sense where invisible lines lie between freedom and risk. And maybe, It's the ability to live inside those blurry edges that defines a new kind of strength, quiet, adaptable, and unwilling to shrink. 6. Ghana. There's a strange feeling when a black traveler steps off the plane in Accra. It isn't coming home in the traditional sense. Most weren't born here, don't speak the local languages, don't have a grandmother waiting on a porch. But it's not quite immigrating either. It sits in that gray space where ancestral memory and present-day reality run parallel, flowing like two rivers that won't fully merge, yet can't be separated. Many black people say that when they first heard Year of Return, it felt like being called by name without being summoned. Not a policy dressed as charity, but a quiet invitation. If your roots were ever severed, this is where you can begin to replant. Heritage festivals, cultural summits, shared meals between locals and returnees, these aren't just symbolic. They're a way of saying, we haven't forgotten that you were taken. But Ghana doesn't roll out a red carpet. The economy is growing, yes, and opportunities are real in tourism, creative sectors, real estate. Yet the gaps are just as real. High lending rates, fragile infrastructure outside the cities, and a bureaucracy that can swallow even the most well-prepared. Many returnees arrive, expecting to be embraced as long-lost kin, only to find they have to relearn how to be seen, how to be understood. English is the official language, but the true language here is sometimes silence, sometimes a subtle cultural distance. Some have said they feel close through skin, through shared origin stories, but also distant, through tone, expectation, or even the way they walk into a room. It's not uncommon to be labeled arrogant or unwilling to adapt, not for actions, but for mannerisms shaped elsewhere. And while the government is working to improve transparency, fight corruption, and modernize infrastructure, these efforts don't erase structural challenges overnight. Inflation creeps into every cup of coffee, every brick bought to build a home. Unreliable electricity, unpaved roads, murky investment channels, they remain part of the lived texture. Yet despite all this, Ghana holds a particular weight. Not because it's an easy place to live, but because it allows you to sit with one unshakable question. If not here, then where can I truly belong? And for many black people, the chance to ask that question on land that doesn't promise perfection, but offers honesty, may be the deepest kind of return. A return that doesn't need a passport. A return that recognizes something blood deep. A return without borders. 7. UAE. Some places gleam so brightly, there's no room for scratches. Dubai is one of those places. A city of air-conditioned malls in the desert, towers so tall, they cast shadows that erase everything below. But when a black professional steps into that gleaming space with the right resume, a valid visa, and hopes for a fresh start, the real question isn't, are there opportunities, but what's the cost of standing here? There's no denying it. The UAE's job market, especially in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, is expanding at breakneck speed. AI, finance, tourism, every sector is hungry for talent. With tax-free salaries and long-term visas like the Golden Visa for startup founders, many black professionals see it as the new promised land, a place where success isn't gated by your passport. But reality shows that even the most qualified can be passed over in interviews not because of experience, but because they don't fit the brand image. Many black immigrants say living here means constantly adjusting yourself, not to blend in, but to avoid standing out. In a society boasting over docent nationality, diversity can feel more like decor than a core value. African communities from South Africa to Uganda to Nigeria are highly visible, organized, with their own festivals and associations. But they're often pushed to the residential edges of the city, as if their presence must be managed by distance. Laws in the UAE are strict sometimes in ways you don't see coming. There are things you can't say, can't post, can't even bring up casually. It's not uncommon for foreigners to lose contracts or face deportation over a single inappropriate social media post. And in this kind of system, black immigrants already used to being scrutinized often find themselves self-monitoring twice as hard, because one small misstep can erase everything they've built. Then there's the cost of daily life, a separate kind of pressure. Dubai might be a land of booming opportunity, but even a basic meal, a modest apartment, or a routine medical visit can push your budget past its limit if you're not careful. Some black expats admit they came thinking, a good job means I'll be fine, only to learn that surviving here requires a specific skill. the ability to anticipate what's never written in the contract. Still, the UAE remains a magnet, because here everything moves fast, efficiently, and without room for hesitation. A black professional can arrive, work, build, and be well compensated if they know how to live in parallel with the spotlight and the rules. And maybe that paradox, the glitz and the control, the promise and the pressure, is what makes the UAE so captivating and why it keeps you just alert enough to never fully rest. 8. Suriname. Some countries are so small you have to zoom in 3 times on a world map to read their name, yet feel vast to anyone who's ever truly touched them. Suriname is one of those places. Tucked deep in the South American rainforest, often overshadowed by its larger neighbors, it holds a complex social structure where migration, memory, and African ancestry meet without needing explanation. Many black immigrants say what strikes them in Paramaribo isn't modern development, but the quiet shock of seeing themselves reflected without having to introduce who they are. Afro-Surinamese people here aren't a marginalized voice asking to be heard, they are the rhythm of daily life. They're in politics, culture, weekend street parties, and the drumbeats echoing through the neighborhoods. It's not uncommon for newcomers to say they were called brother and actually believed it not because of a shared passport, but because of a shared, unspoken history. Suriname's economy is small, but never still. Beneath its resource-rich soil lies the volatility of global prices. Oil, gold, agriculture. Each international ripple affects local budgets. Yet, within that fragility, many black expats see opportunity not the fast money kind, but the kind that allows for something to be built slow and solid. A restaurant, a riverside guest house, a small-scale farm. These things can survive here, even thrive if you know how to read the room and move with the rhythm. Visas aren't the hurdle they are elsewhere. For many nationalities, especially from CARICOM or countries that use the US dollar, travel and business feel relatively smooth. Some even remark how surprisingly low friction the process is compared to bigger nations. But that ease doesn't mean stability. Bureaucratic gray zones still exist. Corruption isn't rare, and once you step outside the capital, infrastructure quickly reveals its cracks. Still, Suriname is a place that makes people stop, not because it promises fireworks, but because it quietly suggests that not all dreams have to be loud. It's a place where you can live, exist, rebuild without hiding where you're from. A place where blackness doesn't have to be defended, but still needs to stay alert. And it's this quietude, not competitive, not performative, that makes Suriname a kind of unadvertised paradise. One meant for those who can sense it and have the patience to live inside it, not above it, not outside it, but as part of its pulse. And that's the list, 8 countries that might surprise you. Places that rarely make the headlines as immigration hotspots, yet are quietly opening their doors to black communities around the world. Each destination holds its own contradictions, some welcoming on the surface but challenging underneath, others calm and steady if you know how to read between the lines. But it's that very complexity that builds the real map of migration, not just about chasing jobs or visas, but about finding a space where you can simply exist as yourself. This video isn't about romanticizing any place. Every country comes with shadows. Every opportunity has its price. But if you understand where you're stepping and why you've chosen to step there, then migration becomes less of a gamble and more of an intentional move. If this video helped you or offered a new perspective, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss more in-depth insights from us. And if you've lived, worked, or experienced life in any of these countries, or have advice for black folks considering moving abroad, drop your story in the comments below. Real stories can become roadmaps for someone who's still deciding. Thanks for watching, and as always, move with awareness and live with intention.